Dan Koe spent almost 5 years writing on the internet before most people had ever heard his name. No viral moment, no lucky break, just a guy posting on X nearly every day, largely ignored, for years before any of it turned into any real money. No newsletter yet, no courses, no community, just writing over and over with no guarantee it would ever go anywhere. Today he runs a newsletter with nearly 200,000 subscribers, a paid membership with thousands of active members, 2 flagship courses, a published book, and an AI company on the side. Multiple reports put the business in the low millions annually, but I'm not counting pockets here. Somewhere in those 5 quiet, unglamorous years, a one-person experiment turned into a real company. Today, we're going to break down exactly what happened piece by piece. Now, before we get into this, comment which format you'd lead with if you were starting from zero today. Would it be writing? Would it be video? Or even audio like a podcast? I want to see where this audience actually sits. Dan Koe is the cleanest example on the internet right now of what I call the full stack creator. That's somebody building a real brand across multiple formats at once. Not one channel, not one platform, not one product. Writing feeds the newsletter feeds the courses feed the membership feeds retention. And every single format points back to the other format constantly. So the whole system compounds instead of just adding up. That's the actual tell of this archetype. And it's easy to miss if you only look at the surface. If you took away Dan's YouTube channel tomorrow, his business will barely notice because YouTube is the downstream of everything else. But if you took away the newsletter, the whole structure will probably start to crack because the newsletter is what everything else was actually built on top of. That's what separates a true full stack creator from someone who just happens to post in 5 different places. One format is load bearing. Everything else exists to amplify and repackage it and push people back towards it. Dan's positioning has stayed almost identical for years, even as specific products around it have multiplied and changed. The core idea is the one-person business, not an agency, not a startup with a payroll and a cap table, one person using leverage instead of headcount. Building something that scales without needing employees to do it. That single phrase does an enormous amount of positioning work in just a few words. It tells a potential reader exactly who this is for, and just as importantly, exactly who it's not for. He's not selling hustle for its own sake. And he's not selling a fantasy of passive income either. He's selling a specific, repeatable alternative to the traditional path of either client work or a 9 to 5, one built around skills you already have. And critically, everything he publishes, from a single tweet to a full newsletter essay, reinforces that same idea from a slightly different angle. That repetition, saying the same core thing in 100 different ways, is exactly what makes a peak positioning statement actually stick over years instead of fading after a few months. His audience is people who already sense the traditional career ladder isn't going to get them where they actually want to go, but who don't really have a real replacement plan in hand. That's a deliberately wide net, and it has to be, because a full stack creator needs enough total audience volume to support content across several different formats running at the same time. A narrow niche newsletter can survive on a few thousand devoted readers. A media brand spanning writing, video, and a paid community needs a much bigger base underneath it. But inside that wide net, there's a specific psychographic thread running through almost everything he makes. These are people who read philosophy alongside business content, who think seriously about identity and meaning right next to income and leverage, who want the business itself to mean something beyond just the money it generates. That's not an accidental detail. It's the exact thing that separates Dan's content from 100 other creator economy accounts saying roughly the same tactical advice about newsletters and personal brands. Here's the part most people skip straight past when they try to copy this model. Before any of the current businesses existed, Dan wrote on X nearly every day for years, mostly to an audience that simply didn't exist. No courses, no paid community, just daily writing, slowly refining his voice and gradually building an audience willing to follow him wherever he went next. And I'll say this, in the beginning, for a while now, we've been following each other on X for years, since like maybe 2016. So I saw it from day one. That's the actual growth play. And it's by far the least glamorous part of the entire model. It's also the part that gets almost entirely erased when people study the finished result instead of the process. Everything that came later, the newsletter, the courses, the membership, YouTube, was all built directly on top of an audience that he already earned the slow way, one post at a time for years before any of it started paying off in some serious way. And as a quick note, if you want more breakdowns like this on these brands or even examples, I do a lot of these on the Raw Entrepreneur newsletter. You can sign up in the description box down below. It's completely free, doesn't cost you anything. The engine runs on writing first, Always. A long form piece goes out in the newsletter. Then it gets distilled down into threads and shorter posts for social. Then it gets repurposed again into scripts and talking points for YouTube. Nothing gets created 3 separate times from scratch, which is a mistake almost everyone makes when they're trying to run multiple channels at once. One core idea gets developed once, thoroughly, and then reshape for each platform's specific format and audience expectations. That's what actually makes full stack creators' workload sustainable over years. The alternative is producing entirely original content for every single channel independently. That's exactly how people burn out within a year. The monetization ladder here is genuinely simple once you actually see it laid out in order. At the bottom, there's a low cost membership. That gets a large number of people saying yes with almost no friction and very little risk. In the middle, there's a course priced around $150, focused narrowly on one specific teachable skill. And at the top, there's a higher tier program running into the thousands. That's built for people who want the complete system rather than a single piece. 3 distinct price points, 3 completely different levels of financial and emotional commitment, and the free content access. The free content across writing and video is what quietly sorts people into which tier they actually belong on before they even see a sales page. Now, there are a bunch of reports on how the monetization has worked and it being in the millions, but I'm not here to count pockets. What we do know is this is a profitable company. Breaking down those 3 different tiers allows Dan to make money from pretty much everybody that comes across his brand who's interested in working with him. And it's easy to look at the finished business and assume it was always inevitable. It really wasn't. It was years of unremarkable daily output before the compounding actually became visible from the outside.